I like to sketch with a pen that dances. Yeah, dances. Okay. And recently I found these. Okay, I'll show you better footage of these because they're awesome. So today I'm going to do a quick sketching thing. It's super crazy simple, but it's going to loosen you up and it's going to get you familiar with what happens to your brain and to your soul when you find a pen that dances. Let's do this. So this is a new pen for me, but it's the perfect example of a pen that dances. It's from Pentel and it's a brush sign pen. And look at that tip. Oh my gosh, here we go. Let me show you what a dancing brush pen is like. It bounces. It's soft enough that when you apply pressure, even the slightest amount of pressure, it makes a thicker mark. And of course you get a little bit of dry brush texture, but I actually love that. Let me show you some more. Oh my gosh. What I also love about this particular pen is how long that brush tip is. Yeah, good stuff. There's a lot of different pen tips. There's the bullet and the chisel, and there's also brush pens out there that call themselves brush tips, but they're just too stiff for me. Look at what I can do. I'm creating this super loose abstract rose, and I'm literally just dancing my hand around the page, and I'm wiggling and just moving along, changing my pressure. But just the action of applying pressure with this brush pen to the paper and having a little sense of what a rose looks like and applying that to this experience, I can create a really whimsical illustration really easily and quickly. I feel like the stiffer markers that call themselves brush markers, really, they kind of fight against you. And yes, they feel like you have more control, but they don't dance. All right, let's look at what I did with this with a more evolved composition. But trust me, friends, this is still super casual and laid back art making. Let's get into it. All right, when I use a dancey pen like this, I do prefer a smoother cold press. I am using a sketchbook right now. I'm not a huge fan of this one, but I'm using it because I know I'm not going to be doing a lot of like juicy watercolor afterwards, and it's got a smoother texture. So it's working really well. Some suggestions I would have would be like a Stonehenge cold press from Legion paper, or New York Central is really nice. And you may even want to use a hot press for this because, again, you're not going to be doing big washes. Okay, I am just dancing along here, friends, as I was chatting there about papers. And I am making shapes that are familiar and comfortable to me. The point here is to play around with this kind of bouncy, dancy tip. Now, if you don't have one of these markers that feels bouncy and soft to you, you're going to be like, this does not sound like what Kristy is describing. Then I just want you to grab like a number 2 round brush and work with ink or work with, just mix up a nice big well of watercolor, whatever color you love, and just do this with an actual brush. And you're going to get the same feel. All right. And here's a few tips. Number 1, friends, I want you to be almost constantly changing the pressure from your hand to the page. That's going to give you a really dynamic feel, and that is also going to encourage you to kind of keep dancing your hand across the page. Number 2, friends, I want you to keep moving. Now, this isn't a continuous line exercise where you don't lift your hand off the page, but I want you to keep moving that hand. Pull away for a second or two, come back quickly, and just keep gliding your hand kind of the side of your palm along that paper and just move and groove and keep that fluid motion going. Now I'm going to start adding some watercolor here, and I am going wet on dry, not a lot of water on my brush, but a lot of color, and I'm just adding in little touches. And depending on the brush marker that you have, you may get some bleeding here. If you used watercolor and a brush to do some brush sketching, you may get some bleeding here, but that's okay. The point is just to experience that kind of dancing lyrical movement. Now, let me show you some exercises you can do with the brush marker or with your brush and sketching. All right, exercises. You want to grab that pen or that brush and you want to make the most bouncy lines you can, the ones that look kind of really fluid and loopy-doopy. Then you want to really put some pressure on it and see what kind of marks you make. Then make some really thin lines, not a lot of pressure, very, very, very close together. And next, you want to make some like ocean wave lines. See how that feels. You see how I'm making like almost imaginary circles with my hand and I'm not making marks all the time? That's me keeping my arm fluid. That's my brain reminding me to keep moving. All right, let's get back to this piece and see where it lands. Now, I pretty much got my watercolor added. I used a little bit of like a shell pink, pastel pink, a sheer kind of fuchsia, and a little bit of a dusty, muted sage green. Now, you bet, I am bringing out another pen. I'm using a fountain pen here just for a little bit more structure, but I would suggest if you're loving that flowy, dancey feel of your brush to use just a black ink and your brush, or if you have a really dancey black brush marker, go for it. And you're just gonna be making fun little outlines, accenting areas that you think need a little bit more oomph or zhuzh. On the center of those quote unquote roses, I might put a little darkness there because that gives them kind of a nice feel. Yeah, you just do you at this moment. But what I want to take a moment to recognize is what that bouncy, fluid, kind of almost continuous motion of your hand does for your artistic soul. It energizes you. It also energizes you, which loosens up your brain, not just your arm, your hand, your wrist, your fingers, your joints. It really loosens you up. And this type of art practice, and I don't want to call it an exercise because this can become finished artwork that you're really excited about. This kind of artwork making is what builds that beautiful, glorious, blessed muscle memory. And your hand and your arm and your brain and your soul and your heart are all going to remember these experiences. The more that you do them, they're going to remember, and they're going to remember well. And it's going to continue to serve you well if you continue to give yourself the opportunity for experiences like this. It's so good. What do you think?